Hey class, it's me again. I'm coming to you now to discuss a little bit about statistics and the statistics that you can potentially use in your next speech. So, what are statistics? Well, statistics is a numerical way to explain the connection between and around phenomena that we see. So all that this means is that we are putting a number to the information that you will be presenting. And statistics are important in our community and in our culture. We put so much effort and emphasis into statistics, not only doing research to discover the numbers that surround whatever we are researching, but additionally, people are very much persuaded by statistics. In our culture, we view numbers as being true. So if we have a large enough representation of something, we oftentimes will suggest that because we have this much, it is true, it is right, it is good, it works. And we're less likely to question reasoning when it has statistics involved in it. um, there's often that saying of like, well, let the numbers speak for themselves, but numbers can't speak, so you have to do it for them. That's a good thing to remember. So when we're talking about statistics, again, all it is numerical data, and statistics are really important to understand for you, the speaker, but also for the audience. I would encourage you that if you can't explain and describe and make sense of what that statistic is in relation to what you're talking about, in relation to the big picture, and how it fits into your entire concept, don't use it. Make sure that you understand clearly um, how to explain those statistics in advance. So statistics also require that you very much create some kind of narrative that is going to explain that data that you're presenting to your audience in an adequate way. One that suggests why it's being used and what it means, and also referring to its source. Those are three ways that I will be looking for you to use statistics effectively and soundly. So once again, it's why it's being used and what that statistic means in relation to what you're talking about. And don't forget the idea of giving the source, because we want to make sure that our statistics have credibility and that we present that source that our audience can trust that credibility. If you've ever watched a debate, you know that going to a fact-checking website is hysterical, because all of the fact-checking is typically regarding and revolving around statistics and how skewed those statistics are when they are presented, or how out of context those statistics are, because people will buy into what they hear these numbers meaning. Um, but the persuasive power of statistics is really one of the most powerful tools that any rational argument can make. So keep that in your back pocket for particularly your persuasive speech. There are a lot of different ways to interpret statistics, but the speaker should always, so each of you, when you're presenting these statistics, should be very mindful of whom your audience is, of what knowledge they have about how to understand or how to read statistical information. If your class hasn't taken a statistics class, or it hasn't taken a basic math class and understanding how information relates or how it's broken down, this idea of mean, median, mode, things that we learned in seventh grade, it can become very misleading, and the audience can be or the topic, the content, the purpose in your presentation can be misrepresented through the use of these statistics. So really make sure that we're working on those. In regards to the statistics, so you can go through this mean, median, mode. It's really teaching you about like how to understand and read numbers in a space, but through these tips for using statistics, I think that we can come to better understand exactly how to use them effectively. So the first thing that we want to do is make sure that your statistics are from a reliable source. A reliable source would be a non-biased source, because, again, much like the elections, we've seen presidential candidates suggesting that they are much more popularized. Well, these numbers speak for this. Well, these numbers are telling us this. Well, I have the numbers. Well, I guess 95% of people disagree. So again, we can watch how those statistics are utilized and from whom they are being used. The next thing is use statistics to quantify your ideas. So qualified means, so qualitative research or qualitative information is typically written or discourse, something like a testimony that would be qualitative. And then quantitative analysis or any type of quantitative research is done with putting a number next to it. So for example, like when you go into Rate My Professor, you'll get comments about the individual. And then there's also a grading scale out of 5, whereby you can put like a specific number of stars to let them know like that they're easy, that they're good, that they're outstanding, etc. So the numbers are the quantitative, and then the text is the qualitative. When we hear statements like, many students will fail this class, tons of people showed up to the event, nearly 1/2 of all students who failed last semester will fail again this semester. Some of you will succeed. So what are the words that I'm saying? Some, many, most, nearly half. Those words are triggers for me as a critical listener because it tries to push the audience to believe in a statistic that may not be actually representative. Many of you will fail. What is the word many? 2? I don't know, right? Nearly half or nearly more than half. Well, last year it was 2 people, so maybe 4 this year, right? And so like in the grand scheme of things, like let's say we're talking about a group of 100 people, does 4 actually matter? So when we are saying the words many, most, some, nearly, make sure that those words are backed up with a number. And in that way, we can start to understand just what many or most means. Use statistics sparingly is the next idea. Why my printer's going off. Statistics, should not be used overly in your presentation. And they shouldn't be used overly in your presentation because not every individual is trained or capable of processing numbers and large numbers at one time, especially if they don't have anything in front of them. So it's one of those things that we have to process in our head. For example, if I was to read you this excerpt, it says, according to a report from the U.S. government's National Center for Education Statistics, quote, in 2005, approximately 40% of the 41.9 million Hispanics and 68% of the 12.3 million Asians in the United States were foreign born. This gives us not only a statement that is rather boring, but additionally, it makes us a bit confused. 40% of 41.9 million and 68% of 12.3 million. I don't know how to do percentages that fast. And if you're not breaking that down for me and you're not explaining exactly what that looks like, it's going to become confusing. Imagine an entire speech that goes with one statement after another, much like that one. Sure, you're presenting us with factual evidence that is going to be persuasive, but I would really watch overly using statistics because it can become more of a deterrent to an audience who isn't familiar with it. The last one, so identify the sources of your statistics, but we know that, and we'll talk about how to cite those sources a bit more on Thursday. Explain your statistics. Do not leave statistics hanging. Make sure that you are always backing them up and explaining how they are helping to make sense of whatever claim you are making. Or if you are trying to persuade us, then walk us through, because these numbers are here, then we must blank. Or because these numbers are here, thus there is a problem. So when we're trying to prove it, you must walk us through that. Round off complicated statistics. This is super important. The idea is that we want to round up to the next number. So if it's like 2.498634999 million, whatever, just 4.3 is suffice. And you can use a word before that to clarify and qualify to your audience that this is an estimate. So you can say nearly or almost. Now, if it's 4.1, let's use an easier number. Let's say it's 156. I could very easily round that up to 160. But that's only 4 people if we're talking, or 4 numbers. If we're talking about grander ideas and we're saying like 156,982, well, 468,000 makes sense, or 469,000. But if we're saying 468,190, now using a statistic and rounding up is embellishing. So really make sure that if you are rounding your statistic up, that the margin that you are rounding it up by is correct, and that it isn't being unethical in the way that you describe it. And the last thing that you want to do is use visual aids to clarify statistical trends. So let's say that you're talking about how a percentage has risen over time, or how many people over the past years have been doing A, B, and C. What I really want you to do is throw in a chart or a graph there, and then you can use that as a visual representation of your statistics, because now we can start to see what that distribution looked like, or how that statistic has changed. Because numbers, again, that asking you to do percentages, it just doesn't work all that easily. So that is our idea about statistics. I don't know if there's anything else. Oh, if you are using statistics, and I think we talked about this before with supporting materials, that if you are using a statistic and we're saying, yeah, we talked about this with your attention getters. Remember that if we are using a large statistic, it is always helpful to break it down and let the audience see what that looks like in relation to our classroom. So we have 19 people in the classroom, and if you wanted to break that down by the statistical, by your statistic, so like 1 in 20 students will get blank. That means one of you in this classroom. 5 students, or 5 college-age students out of 100, or out of 100 have considered committing suicide. So we'll find out what that number would look like. That means about roughly 3 of us in this classroom, right? When we put it back in those terms, it gives us something that we can compare it to. So that is the information on statistics. I'll create my next video for testimony.